Cast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar here today entitled Best of the MoodleMoot. This was the UK MoodleMoot just held a few weeks ago. I am the Vice President of Sales here at eThink, Josh Mitchell, and I'm going to be presiding over today's webinar, introducing my fellow speakers here shortly, but we're going to take you through some of the sessions that we did at the MoodleMoot recently, and we're very pleased to have you all here today. We've got a lot of content for you, so I want to jump right into our agenda and get moving into the sessions here today. I'm going to start with introductions. I already introduced myself, but I will introduce my colleagues who are going to do the bulk of the speaking here momentarily. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview about who we are at eThink Education so you have some context for the kind of work that we do. Then you can see here the listing of the presentations that we are going to go through in brief here for you today. We are going to leave a little bit of time at the end for questions and hopefully some answers. To that end, in the GoToWebinar pane, there is a questions feature. You can use that to submit any questions you have as we go. There's also a chat feature. We don't pay attention to that, so please don't use that one. But anything you have as we're going through, you can use the questions pane, and we will try to leave some time at the end to answer some of those. So as I said, my name is Josh Mitchell. I'm the Vice President of Sales here at eThink Education. I'm joined by two of our UK staff, Ben Cass, who's our Solutions Architect, and Chris Pratt, who is a Client Care Analyst on our team. They each had two presentations at the UK MoodleMoot that they are going to give you an overview of here today. So you will be hearing from them very shortly. All right, as I said, I want to start with just a little bit of an overview of who we are at eThink so you have some context for the kind of work that we do for our clients and kind of where we're coming from as we do these various presentations. We are a certified premium Moodle partner. So if you're familiar with the Moodle Partner Network, there are more than 100 Moodle partners across the globe. There are a smaller number of premium Moodle partners. That's a subset of the overall Moodle Partner Network. Premium Moodle partners can offer you both Moodle as well as Moodle Workplace. So that is a newer product that we're not going to really talk a whole lot about here today, I don't think, but that is one that is more oriented toward professional education needs, adds some administrative features that core Moodle doesn't have. So we support both products here at eThink. We are a very service-heavy provider, so that is something that's very different about us vis-a-vis anyone else that you may be familiar with in the Moodle space. We do what is called a fully managed model. That's for both Moodle and Moodle Workplace. So what that means is that everything on the back end of the software, whichever product our clients use to fit their needs, we do all of the back end configuration and management of that platform for them. That allows our clients to be able to focus on their content and actually leveraging the tools to administer the training or the teaching and learning that they're doing while we do all of the back-end software management. That begins with trying to figure out which of those products is the best fit for our clients. So we have a very defined process for onboarding and discovery to take a client through and really understand what their needs and objectives are so we can determine which of these products is going to be the best vehicle to meeting those needs. So from our standpoint, we really look at fit, what makes the most sense, Moodle or Moodle Workplace for a particular client, and choose the one that is going to better fit their needs. Just to give you a little bit more of a sense for the kind of work that we do. So I talked about this notion of full management. What that means is that we manage, as I said, everything on the back end. That begins with the look and the feel of a client's site. So there are a number of different theme options that we have available for Moodle, and a lot of configurability with Moodle Workplace as well. So when we bring a new client on, we start just by looking at how do you want the site to look and feel, show them their different options, and then do all of the configuration, the branding, the theming of whatever they're choosing for them. So that is something that we fully manage on our client's behalf. There's a lot of capability in both products to customize not only the look and the feel of it, but the different kinds of roles and reporting that can be used, different plugins and modules that may extend functionality. All of that is very, very flexible, and we do all of that back-end work for our clients. So if there's a plugin that someone is looking at, we install and configure that. If there is a particular kind of report that a client needs, we do that for them. We go in and build that report, depending on if it's Moodle or Moodle Workplace, the mechanics are a little bit different, but we do all of that work on behalf of our clients. Those are just support requests. We do a lot of training for our clients as well. We do webinars like this each time a new release comes out where we highlight the new features. We have asynchronous courses we give all of our clients that we routinely update as new upgrades and new features come out. We do a lot of instructor-led training with our clients. So there's a myriad of ways that we look to train our clients, get them comfortable using the products and the platform in order to make their deployment successful. We have a lot of expertise in the area of integration. So that is something that our clients have a variety of integration needs, whether it is just setting up single sign-on, whether it is integrating with an HRIS system or a student management system. We have a lot of expertise in implementing those kinds of integrations. So that is something else that our team is very good at. We've been in this business now for almost 13 years. We've grown very rapidly. We've expanded from the US into the UK and the European market. As we've grown, we've maintained a retention rate of about 98%. And the way that we have done that is in, number one, this model that I'm talking about is very unique, but the quality of service that we provide is also something that is really above and beyond what others in this market do. Just to give you a little flavor for that, here are some quotes from some of our clients. I won't read these to you, but our average time to responding to support tickets when one of our clients has something that they need is roughly 45 minutes to first response. So that means a client submits a ticket in our Zendesk system. Within 45 minutes on average, they're hearing back from a human, not just an automated response, but an actual member of our team that we're working on something. That is really what has made us successful, not only in growing, but in retaining clients, keeping our clients very sticky with us. It's the quality of service we provide that we really hang our hat on as an open source provider. So that's a little bit, I didn't want to take a whole lot of time here, but that's a little bit about who we are at eThink and the kind of work that we do. What we're going to do next is go back and forth between Ben and Chris. I think Ben is going to kick us off here in a moment with his session on gamification in corporate learning. And so we'll go back and forth between them, going through each of these topics in brief, and then we will leave some questions, some time for questions, I should say, at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and turn control over to Ben. And as I said, Ben Cass is a solutions architect on our team. And Ben, you can take it away.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can, and I can see your screen, so you're good to go.
Excellent. Well, we thought we'd keep you on your toes, Josh, because we've mixed it up a little bit. So we're actually going to start with small changes make big differences. Not the gamification one, but that one is coming up. So do stay tuned for that one with Chris. So we thought we'd kick off with one of the sessions that we actually delivered at the Moot. Just to give you a bit of a flavour of what kind of things happened during this session. And this one really was, we just really spoke about all the different things that you can potentially do with a Moodle site, maybe a Moodle course, or the overall look and feel to make some big differences to your site overall. And the first thing that we looked at was the fact that we can break up that content. So instead of it just being just a long list of text, long list of images, we had a look at the use of imagery to break up that large chunk of text. And we're going to talk a little bit about using images for links and talk about use of columns, use of imagery as fancy breakpoints. So basically trying to make it look completely different to what you may have had before. So just as an example, here's one sort of out of the box kind of example that we showed that just sort of shows you like a topic that has different headings and paragraphs and some links. And what we then decided to do was showcase that the fact that you can break that text, that big chunk of text up into a better way by using some imagery. So you can see here what we've done, we've just added in potentially a stock image or something on those lines that can really break up your text. So you're not just having your users look at a long list of text, you have the ability to give them some emphasis around the imagery as well. We did then also speak a little bit about imagery as well into terms of use of links. So again, as you can see on the previous screens that we showed, the link was quite, it blended in with the text. It wasn't very visual. So you can potentially use images as well to actually showcase off those links a little bit more prominent than what they probably would have done before. And again, using that imagery to break up those different sections. So you can see there we've just added in like a little pattern that separates the text out. So again, it doesn't just look like a big long list of text. We then spoke a little bit about framing. So we spoke a little bit about the understanding of how you can utilize things like background images for frames or blocks of text, different fonts, those kind of things. So we spoke really a little bit about the backgrounds images. So again, framing that content. So instead of that content just being purely text, you can see that we're still using that same scenario as we did on the last slides, but we've actually just framed each individual step in its own little image, background image. So a patterned image, just giving you an idea of how you can separate that content out to be able to actually give you much more clarity to that particular section. We then also spoke about video framing. So you can see here on the left hand side, we tried to give you a little bit of an idea of this custom CSS that you can apply to your sites. I won't dive into the custom CSS piece today, but feel free to go and have a look at how you can do that. But you can see here, as instead of just adding a video, a YouTube video into the site, as you can see on the right hand side, we've actually framed that that video inside an image, and that image is a laptop, so it looks like it's as part of that screen. We then spoke a little bit about fonts. So again, you can see here that we've utilized some slightly different fonts so that it does allow you to then again break up that content by utilizing a different font for your headings than you are for your general text as well. Which does lead me nicely onto those headings. So here's again that out of the box one, that vanilla look and feel. And then just some ideas that we gave around looking at different ideas or different ways of breaking out those headings. So here, for example, we've just added in a left border, a thick left border that allowed the site or allowed the content to stand out a little bit more, so you can clearly see again those breaking up points. Or it may be that you add in a background color to those headings as well. So you can see there we've added a background color in, and you can actually see if you look closely enough, we have actually just rotated that as well slightly. So it gives a bit of a slant onto those headings as well, that allows you to actually showcase them off. And again, a couple more here. So you can see we've added in like an outline to make it really, really big so that it does stand out. Or again, you can see here we've added in a patterned background or a pattern border around a block bit of text. And then lastly, we spoke a little bit about making those small changes. So in this particular section, we looked at rounded corners, slanted boxes, and then sort of movement on hover. So you can see here what we've done. On the right hand side, you'll see the blocks appear, and instead those little small changes that you can make, so little things like the ability to just add in rounded corners. So instead of having those solid straight lines, we've added the ability to do some rounded corners. They just showcase off those blocks a little bit better. We've added some background colors to them. We've actually added some slanted containers here, so you can see here that one that says level up is now on a bit of a slant. So you can see again that just highlights that key area for you. And then lastly, you can see here that we've made a little bit of a hover element, so that when you hover over that particular area, it does a little bit of a slant, so you can see that you are actually hovering on it. And then the last thing on this particular section before I hand over to Chris is the idea that we want to make things simple. So I do speak a lot about making things easy for the learner. So do make things, hide things that are not relevant to a learner. So you can see here, again, we've got a very vanilla site, but we're actually hiding a lot of the elements. So if you didn't want an image at the top, we can remove it. You can see here that anything that's not relevant, we have taken out from the screen. So do keep it simple. And that's one of the kind of things that we try to talk about in that particular session. But as Josh said, if you do have any questions, do stick them in the question panel as we go along, because I'm going to now hand over to Chris, who, again, we've modelled them up just for Josh, who's going to talk a little bit about H5P. Over to you, Chris.
Thanks very much, Ben. So this session, we were looking at different ways in which you can use H5P within your Moodle courses. This wasn't essentially aimed at those people who are using H5P quite a lot because they may be familiar with some of these techniques already. So it was for those who were sort of like just dipping their toe into the H5P world. For those of you who are completely new to it, H5P is an activity type in Moodle as a plugin before version 3.9 and now is part of 3.9 core, and allows you to create all sorts of various rich and interactive content types. So how can you use H5P as elements within your course that might be a little bit from the norm? So we talked about a few different areas in which you can do that. So we looked at banners. A lot of courses have a banner image on them, but it's static and doesn't really provide much information. So there might be a way in which we can use H5P's image slider perhaps to make that a little bit more interesting with a little bit more movement. You can use the quiz or the question set to get feedback in different ways. The column activity is a great way of bundling different content together into one activity, and then using the filter you can present that on the course page. And the last one, which arrived sort of late as I was creating this presentation, the interactive book content type that arrived from H5P, which is a little bit of a competitor to SCORM in the way that it builds, again, content types into one package and allows you to take all that in one form and run through in like a book. So you have pages, you can have a table of contents, and it's a great tool for creating things. So obviously, SCORM, you may need to purchase a license for something to create, like Articulate, to create that content. H5P is part of Moodle Core now, so essentially it is free. So let's have a look at the banners. If you could move forward, Ben. Great stuff, thank you. So a lot of courses have a banner image, as we said, like this one here is a biology course, but instead of being just one image, we can use the H5P image slider. You can see here to add a few different images into the page, and you can give little bits of information. Like here we've got a fact that's related to the topic of the course. You can put information about when announcements, when things are coming up. So we've got here there's an assessment due, and that information can be updated as your course goes through. And on the next slide, we've got how to glean feedback on a course using the question set. So you can use the feedback activity in Moodle for that, but it's a little bit plain and boring. With the H5P quiz element, you can add images or videos into there. You can have styling with the background. You can add more details and take questions in and out quite easily. The only issue you have is you can't really download the content. So if you advance the video a little bit further, Ben, we can see that so the feedback is submitted, and then you have to then dive into each individual response to get that information. Hopefully that'll be updated so you can export this as, say, a CSV or something like that. But it is, again, it's just a nice way of changing the feedback method and breaking it up. On to the next one. So this is a column activity, and this one's hidden on the page, so students can't see the actual activity in the course, but they can see the content. And to start with, we've got an interactive video, which, if anybody's not used H5P, is a very powerful tool. You can take a YouTube video, and then at points throughout the video, you can test the learner's understanding of what they are watching by adding questions into the video as an interactive element. And if they don't get the question correct, you can send them back to the point in the video where the answer to the question was being detailed. So if you spin on the video, please, Ben. So here's the video running. There's a question being asked, and you can see that goes through there. Now the next one is the pop-up. So you can click on the little graphic, and it'll bring up information and text. You can also have it bring up a video. and we can, I think it's gone back in the video there, but let's sort of advance down. So it's going to bring up the text in a pop-up, and then the next one will show you a video as a pop-up. Again, just ways of presenting this content in a different way. And we move down, and you can even include the audio recorder in there as well. So just a few examples there of how you can embed different types of content into one activity there and present it as like a little story, a little journey. Okay, so if we move forward, Ben. And the last one is the interactive book. So I've put here interactive book versus SCORM. So anybody who's used SCORM will see some similarities here. So you've got the table of contents on the left there with different topics divided up, and you can jump through them. This page here has a similar to before, it has text in the pop-up. And as you work through the course, you're then tested on your understanding. So this is a little quiz that's built into it, and you advance through, and the user's progress is recorded as they go through the quiz. Here I'm doing pretty well. Can it be 3? And look at that, 3 out of 3, fantastic. Anyone think
I think
I've
you've done that
before?
one before, Chris.
I have to confess I may have done it several times. And then if we scroll down on that, so if you advance the video again, Ben, don't keep stopping. And so this is the drag and drop, and it's asking you how to make the milkshake. Again, another different way of testing the learner's understanding. The next one is a video, so that just skips through. It's just a YouTube link. But again, it just shows you how you can embed all those different visual elements into something that's quite rich and test the understanding of the learner, and to show different ways of just breaking things up and make it a little bit more interesting and enjoyable for the user. Here's another one where it's a drag and drop words. So you drag the words from the selection on the right into there, and unfortunately I don't do very well, but I did that on purpose just to show you that you can show the solution. And lastly, I think I might have just about managed this one. And excellent, 3 out of 3. So hopefully that's given you a few ideas of how you can use H5P that little bit different with your course and your content. And lastly, the interactive book is new, so please give that a look and see if you can create some content that's challenging and interesting and interactive like this has been. Back over to you, Ben.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, so I mean, the H5P tool is one of the more interactive tools that are available in Moodle. It does give you a lot of scope to play about with, and there's plenty of different ideas that you can use.
Ben, I think perhaps we've frozen here. I don't know if everybody can hear me. Chris, can you hear me still?
I can hear you, Josh.
I think we may have, I wasn't sure if it was a system thing or if it was just Ben. So I think Ben may have, unfortunately, either had an internet blip or something. Ben, are you able to hear us, Ben?
Can't hear Ben.
Can't hear Ben. Chris, do you have, I suppose since you guys already messed with my order anyway, we could just bounce around a little bit. Do you have the same PowerPoint, Chris? If I transition presenter over to you, you can just jump into your next one?
Yes.
All right, let's do that. And then maybe we'll get Ben back for his last one. All right, so I've made you presenter. So if you want to share screen and jump into your second presentation.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes, I can.
That's the old one. That's the wrong one. Let me bring up the right one.
We were tracking well on time anyway, so we're good here. Thanks everyone for bearing with us.
Okay, I think we're ready now. Okay, yes, so gamification in corporate learning, that was the subject of the next presentation that I was presenting at the Moot.
Before you keep going, I think you're in the I see a number of documents on your screen rather than just the PowerPoint.
Okay, apologies. Let's see if I can. How about now?
That's better. I think you've got the right
Perfect.
view.
Perfect, great stuff. Right, yeah, so on to this one. Yeah, so gamification in corporate learning, does it work? That was the question posed to me for this presentation. And it's an interesting one because we have a lot of corporate clients who do work through a lot of content that is probably considered as, well, it's compulsory stuff. So it's probably considered maybe a bit stale and maybe dull for some people because it is compulsory. So to try and make it more interesting to learners, we often get posed the question how to gamify it. So first of all, I wanted to look at how, well, what is it the correct term? What does gamification mean? So essentially it's sort of talking about keeping score, creating a competition, and with competition you have winners and losers. Now I'm not sure about everyone else, but if I was losing all the time, I wouldn't find that fun or enjoyable. So that's the key, is to try and make it fun and enjoyable without that feeling that you're on the losing team all the time, for example. So that's what I try to say to clients, is that let's try and make it fun, and that will lead to more engagement. And so there are things that need to be that can be gamified quite easily, such as like health and safety training. But there are other things that where people it's compulsory, such as standards training, compliance training, things that you feel like you're jumping through hoops to achieve. And so what we try to do is to stop it from feeling compulsory. And then once you can make those things enjoyable, the compulsory element starts to take a back seat on that. So what are the benefits that you gain from this? Well, uptake will be greater, participation will be higher, motivation will be higher, skill levels increase, and you start to see a better return on investment for those for that training. What pitfalls? Well, some people just don't like to play. They feel that it's unnecessary to gamify something, to make something fun. They just want to take part, get their certificate, move on, maybe don't see the point in it all. So you have to understand your learners. You're taking all previous feedback from similar activities that you use to shape the content and delivery of that content in a way that addresses that feedback. Some people, as I say, see it as time wasting, just rather get it done. So it's all about pitching it to the right level and ensuring that the focus and the importance of the content is not lost on subjects that are very serious, such as first aid and health and safety.
Hey, Chris, real quick, but I sorry to cut you off, but we're still seeing your cover slide, gamification and corporate learning doesn't work. I don't know if you've been advancing, but we're not seeing any advancement if you were.
Yeah. Can you see now?
I'm still seeing just that same cover one.
How about now?
Ah, there we are. Yes, now I see.
Okay.
Is it the correct term? Is the slide I see?
That's correct. Yeah, that's the one. Apologies for that, people. Yeah, so I was just going through those bullet points essentially. So the words were still meaningful, thankfully. So on to the next point. The last point is looking at the elements of gamification. Again, point scoring means that someone will get more points than others. That leads to winners and losers. And is that appropriate for the workplace? Those losers may end up demoralized, less enthused to take part. And this goes for leaderboards as well. I'm not a big fan of leaderboards. If you do use them, a lot of care has to go into them. And I will look at just in one of the later slides a way that you can do that. And engagement is absolutely key to all this. If a learner is engaged in the content or the task, then they're more likely to remember what is being taught. By making something more enjoyable, I believe people will become more engaged. It seems to be a natural progression. So how can we achieve these things with zero or nearly zero effort? So we talked about things like badges, something that's core in Moodle. Badges can be awarded by activity completion, course completion. You can manually allocate them. They show up in the user's profiles, and I think they're just a nice way to record their achievement visually. There's something that can be created quite quickly as well. Badges are very, very quick and easy to create. The next one is certificates. Again, it's another thing that that people like to achieve. They can be printed, they can be emailed. There are various plugins that you can achieve this with in Moodle, the custom certificate plugin being one of our favorites. Moodle Workplace comes with one built in, and I think that's coming out as a plugin. It may already be available, but I think that's coming soon. And again, you can allocate those through course and activity restrictions based on the completion of the user. And again, some more built-in aspects that you can use. So you can use the restrict access to open up elements of the course depending on what's been completed. You can use that also to differentiate using different grades. So if a user gets a higher grade, they open a different piece of content or another task or another quiz. So differentiation, you know, taking users on a different journey. That's quite difficult in the corporate world to know what level to pitch at. You might not have met them in person or even virtually, unlike, say, in an academic setting where you soon get to understand what works and doesn't work with your learners. So using Moodle to open up content and further learning is a very good way and can be quite powerful to achieve. Using the quiz, obviously, is a great way to establish understanding of a topic. You can use the points for awarding prizes, but again, being wary of having too many winners and losers, because that can be counterproductive. Lesson is a core activity that seems to be underused quite a bit. It's not just about converting a physical lesson into a Moodle lesson. You can create some great things such as like a story. A colleague of ours, Daniel, created a story to demonstrate how the lesson can be used to take users through a scenario where they have to make different decisions that then influences how the story and the scenario unfolds. For example, it could be a health and safety issue where, for example, someone's fallen off a ladder and that person taking part in the lesson is asked what actions they should take. And then based on their decision, the scenario changes. And this comes back to getting the learner engaged in the content or activity. H5P, we've already touched on. You've seen a few bits there. SCORM, likewise. It's great for building rich content. You can create branching scenarios like the lesson and just a bit more rounded and fuller in their approach. We also talked about how to incentivize the learning. So having something on top of the skills that can be gained is a nice incentive. And one way to do that, an idea I stole from Ben actually, is instead of producing a certificate, why not turn that certificate into a voucher for a free drink in the canteen, some equipment, maybe more training, who knows? Just that little bit of extra to add on top. There are a couple of other plugins here that we've got as well. So one of them is MoTrain, which awards coins, which can be turned into physical products. We'll look at that in more detail in a second. And Level Up, which works on awarding points, which gives the users a level or achievement sort of as they progress. This is MoTrain. As you can see, there's coins to be awarded. They're based on activity completion or other tasks that can be done. And you can turn those into physical elements in the store. Vacation sounds great right about now. 400 coins, I think I can get there. But you just, again, there's a leaderboard there. Something to be careful of with leaderboards. I just think it's having, like, you maybe see the same people at the top, and that's maybe a little bit demoralizing for those who work hard but don't seem to get that recognition in terms of what the points are being awarded as. Level Up works in a similar way, awarding points or XP. So, but I like the idea of grouping those points into a level. So you might have somebody who's at the bottom of level 5 versus somebody who's at the top of level 5, but they're still both level 5. So, you know, they're in the same group sort of thing. And also on the bottom left there, you can see the group ladder where you can use Moodle groups to group those people together in teams. Again, I think that works a little bit better than individuals, but unless you're in like Hufflepuff, for example, here, and your team doesn't want to play, then unfortunately you're more than likely to be stuck at the bottom. And lastly, we had a look at Treasure Hunt, which is another great little plugin. It's something that probably won't work very well during the pandemic because it sort of relies on you doing something in the physical world. So you set a task, you find clues, for example, and then using your GPS coordinates, you validate your location. So it's a bit like taking an escape room and making it on a larger scale. I think it could be a great team building exercise or an icebreaker or something like that, but only when we're all allowed to go outdoors and enjoy ourselves again. And that is what we had for those for that presentation. Ben, are you back with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can
All
hear
right.
you.
Excellent. I don't know what happened there. I think there's some sabotaging going on. Let me.
I just wanted the microphone. I was bored.
I think that's what happened. Let me attempt to share out my screen again. Okay, so hopefully you can see that again.
Yes.
Yes, that's fantastic. That's what I wanted. So hopefully I can finish off our session with the last one that we presented, and this is mainly around using jQuery to augment theme design. And really what we spoke about in this session is about how you can make some changes to your theme without effectively changing the core code. And be able to make some nice visual changes or some additional pieces of functionality without doing too much. So if we move on, as you can see, everybody is aware that there are countless themes available for Moodle. Some of them have vast array of settings available to them, such as like the adaptable theme or the Fortin theme or something on those lines have quite a lot of settings that you're able to do. But sometimes some of the options that you need are not always available. So how do we get around that? What can we do to help solve that? And what we would really do is we would have a look, as you can see here, theme settings, loads of theme settings available, but sometimes we need to use jQuery as some workarounds when something isn't possible. So word of caution. Before you do that, my background is in programming, but I am hopeful that I don't go too deep into the weeds to lose you. But it is best to build something like this when you're building anything, is to build it directly into the theme. So if you have the ability, or you have a theme designer or theme developer, or you work with a partner, then get them to help you. Otherwise, be very, very cautious and make sure you do everything on a test site before you do it. Everything that I'm going to show you are workarounds to avoid making core changes. These are things that we can change across the site without actually affecting any of the code. So the first thing that we need to do in order to use jQuery is to identify the objects on the page. And the way that we identify objects in the page, we may want to move something on the page using jQuery. So let's start with, for example, the level up block on the right hand side. Let's say we want to move that into a completely different location. Well, we might want to do that using jQuery. So what we would do is we would use F12 on the keyboard on Chrome, which will open up our little developer tool on the right hand side, and it'll show the sort of page, as you can see on the right hand side, as a bit of HTML. And effectively what we're doing now is we're going to use our little inspect tool, and then we're going to click on the area we want to identify. So as you can see here, I'm clicking on the screen where the level up block is, and it is telling me that the ID of that is called that. So this basically means that now we can utilize that ID, so that reference field that we've got, we're going to write it down, use it later. IDs work better than classes, but classes do work, but they're not always unique on the page, so do be careful on that if you're going to use a class, but an ID is always unique to that page. And this really then just allows us to utilize the jQuery going forward. And we do that using this additional HTML area, and this is where we might need to reference a jQuery file or add the function in or something like that. So for example here, we'll add in the latest version of jQuery into the head so that we can then utilize jQuery to move things around. So they're the kind of things that we do to set things up. And then let's have a look at some of the things what we can do. So once we've added in our jQuery, we've identified our element that we want to use. Let's go and have a look. So what can you do with jQuery? Well, you can do quite a lot, but you can also break the site. So as I said before, do make sure you use your test development servers first. Don't try this on live sites. jQuery doesn't always have the best way of showing you what you've done wrong. So it's more like a trial and error. So always try and use a development site where possible. So let's have a look at moving elements. So we're going to go back to that additional HTML area, and we can see here we're going to use that block region side pre, so the ID that we found before, and we're going to utilize a couple of jQuery methods. So you can see here that we're going to detach something and we're going to append it. So in this particular one, we're actually going to take it away from the page, and then we're going to add it back to the page in a different location. So the nav draw again is just identifying another ID on the page where we can utilize it. So here we go. So here's our before. So our block is on the right hand side, and here's our after. So we've actually taken away that block and moved it to a completely different location on the page using jQuery. So you can see here we can obviously may want to use some more custom CSS to make the page wider. You may want to detach the breadcrumbs, for example, and attach them above the image. There's all kinds of different things you can utilize with jQuery. And really, it's just a case of utilizing this more than actually changing any core code. Another example here is we may want to hide and show something, so make like a bit of a toggle. So in this instance here, we're slightly a little bit more complex than the last one, but we're going to use this on the login page to tidy something up a little bit. Hence the reason why we've identified the login ID elements. And we need two places for this to work. So one of them is in the head section for the function, which you see on the screen. And the second place is at the bottom before the body closes, which is essentially the piece where we make it hide and show. So let's have a look. So the body section, we might want to use this if we're doing something like single sign-on, for example. So if we go into something like this, what we're doing is we're turning, you can see here on the left-hand side, we've got a login box. If you click on that manual users section, it will then pop out the actual, the username and password. So what this basically does, it forces users to use the SSO. So if you do use SSO on your sites and you're thinking, okay, well, all my users get lost because they keep putting in their username and password as opposed to clicking the SSO box, this is a good example of changing that up. If we expand a little bit more, what we've done here, we've just identified a particular page. So we're not loading this element up on every single page. We're basically saying just utilize it on the login page, and this will be able to sort of pinpoint essentially one page. So a little bit of good practice there. The next one maybe that we want to add in some text. You can see we've appended some text here. So we've appended in the forgotten your password text, etc. You can use it to append items to the screen as well. And we can use it for password reveals as well. So we have that ability to reveal some passwords. So if you think of the new Microsoft way of clicking on the little eye and it showcases and shows you the password, well, you can use a little bit of jQuery to do that. The actual code on the screen will work on any site. It's not specific to a theme or anything like that. You could potentially just copy and paste that directly into your site. So it is fairly straightforward, but just to give you a little bit of a summary on that, do use the core settings where possible. Augment the theme when needed, and there's no alternative if possible. As we said, test it on a development site, and don't just copy and paste. Do try and understand what the code is doing to make sure you're aware of the different things. And that's it from me. That would have been my cue to pass to Chris, but seeing as I had some technical difficulties, Chris jumped in and did his before me. So what I'll do is I'll pass it back to Josh, who I'm sure will try and lead us on some question and answer session.
Very good. Yes, thank you, Ben, and thank you, Chris. I will take control back here, and all I'm going to put up is some contact information so that if you do have any questions after this session, you can feel free to reach out. That should be on the screen now. As I'm doing that, hopefully Chris and Ben, you're getting an opportunity to peruse some of the questions, which we'll summarize for a moment. But I will say we are going to share the recording from today in follow-up to this, so you will receive that. And I believe we have links to the full presentations from these sessions, I think. If I'm wrong, then I apologize, but I think that's the case. So we will be following up with additional information after this, and you can feel free to reach out if you want to schedule time to discuss your own situation and how we might be able to help you. So with that little prelude here into our Q&A, Ben, it looks like we had a question back during your first session that you were talking about, and it was about accessibility related to the changes. Do you want to address that one?
Yeah, I certainly can. So there was a question around how accessible are the changes that I was making. So, so effectively, yes, they're all accessible, because all we was doing was adding in background images, or we were adding in an image to break up some text, anything like that. Effectively, if you're going to use a screen reader, would ignore them. If you're using any of the accessibility plugins, would still make all the changes available, i.e. changing the background from white to black and so forth. So effectively, they're fully accessible across the Moodle platform. I think in terms of some other questions that I saw in there, I'll just jump in for another one. What I say, there was one asking some very specific questions around YouTube. So I don't actually think that that is possible to do. So the question was around if you're using YouTube videos, can you remove the pause buttons and the suggested videos using any of the tips that we've shown. So unless Chris is going to jump in and tell me differently, I believe there's no way of doing that, because essentially that piece of code, when you're dropping something in, is embedding the YouTube video from another location. So I don't think we have any handle on the ability to change that.
Yeah, I'm along with that one. I'm not aware of a way of doing it. If there is, then great. Please let us know.
Yep. And then I see, yeah, go ahead, Josh.
I was going to say, the only other question that I see that I don't think we've answered yet is also relating to YouTube. Do you want to address that one? Is that where you were headed?
Yeah, I was heading with that around the positioning of images and that kind of stuff. And we can certainly, as part of the follow-up, we can certainly showcase some of the presentations that we've got, some of the code that's in them. We can certainly follow up with them for you, no problem. So some people were asking around, can we have the code that we've shown, or some of the pieces that we've done? We can certainly showcase that. Obviously, the recording will be sent to you, but I'm sure we can send a copy of the presentation as well.
Very good. Yeah, I think there were a handful of other questions as we went, but I think they were addressed as we were going through. If anyone has any additional questions, please do go ahead and ask those now. Ben, do you have any questions for Chris, or Chris, any questions for Ben? How about you guys put each other on the spot?
Sure, why not? So Chris, what about your favorite H5P elements? Seeing as we spoke a little bit about H5P and all the different kinds of things that you can do with it, you're probably more closer to some of the clients and utilizing it. So have you seen a really good example, or have you got a favorite H5P tool that you like to use?
I think my favorite is the interactive video. Right from the very first viewing of H5P that I saw during a presentation of a Moodle user group, I thought it was absolutely fantastic. The way you can build the interactivity in, the things you can do, like stopping the viewer from advancing through the timeline to skip to the end. It's a really powerful tool. Obviously, you have to have the content to go with it. It does support YouTube, as I said in my presentation. You can upload your own MP4 files as well. So having that content already created, or creating that content, is what takes the time. Adding the interactivity really doesn't take that much time. But I've seen some great stuff. You know, I mean, probably people are sick of hearing about COVID and coronavirus on the news a lot, but I've seen some great content around that, and you know, trying to convey that message over to people. So yeah, that would be my favorite.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite, Ben?
Well, I would agree with you. That's the place I was going there. In terms of the interactive video, I think is a great tool because of the fact that you can utilize ready-made videos. So it's not always a case of having to start and build your content from scratch, but it can be a case of actually, well, you can use a ready-made video. You can use it from YouTube, or you can have one already done, and then you're basically adding in an overlay of interactivity available to you, and that can obviously report back into Moodle. We can obviously see the results and take bits and pieces from there as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and it takes that thing that is, if essentially a video is very one way, it's directed at the viewer, and having those interactive elements makes it a two-way thing. So you can gauge and judge the understanding of the learner, how much they're partaking in watching the video by throwing those little questions and quizzes in. And it also has things like you can have pop-outs and links to other content as well. So it really does build. And when you go and put that into the new interactive book as well, I think it becomes really powerful.
Yeah. And I think just as a follow-up on that one, I can see somebody asked a question, Chris, around can you embed H5P on a Moodle page rather than it being displayed in its own little page? So can you embed it within a page and maybe have some text and imagery around it?
Yeah, so you can use the filter to embed that content. That's how I did the column in the example that I did. Stephen, I think maybe he's asking about a block. I think you can probably put it in a HTML block. I've not tried, but that would be my first theory, that you could probably try put that in a HTML block.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah. There's the H5P filter plugin, so would allow you to put that in different places as well.
Yeah, cool.
So I don't see any other questions. I don't have any more for you, Chris, at the moment, but I'm sure Josh
was enjoying that.
Well, you know,
that looks like the end. I think that was a valuable addition there at the end, just talking about H5P elements. So I'm not seeing any other questions come in. So in the absence of some of those questions, I think we can probably go ahead and wrap here. And as we do that, I just want to thank Chris and Ben for your presentations, for doing and for being flexible here and bouncing back and forth due to our technical difficulties. So thank you both. Hopefully everyone that was attending today learned something new, and we will be sharing this recording in follow-up, and we look forward to interacting with any of you that may have questions. So please do feel free to reach out. Keep an eye out for some of our future webinars, and we will look forward to interacting with you down the line. Everybody have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody.